Part 4. Hong Kong movies, I can see the loyalty value, I am not panicked at all. Author, Ban Wanqing Buletin Liang. Chapter 31. Zhang Tianyang blew out a puff of smoke and sat naturally on the faucet. There was a cold glint in Li Qing's eyes. Mr. Zhang no longer raises elephants in Thailand, so how can he have time to return to Xiangjiang? He looked at Zhang Tianyang calmly, and Zhang Tianyang also tilted his head and looked at Li Qing playfully. I heard that my brother was killed. No, the prince asked me to come back and take charge of the overall situation. Zhang Tianyang raised his head, crossed his legs, looked at the ceiling and said, the industry left by my father must not be occupied by outsiders, right? All the hall masters looked at the prince, with some thoughts in their eyes. The prince smiled awkwardly and said nothing. Li Qing also understood that this was a premeditated plan. No wonder the news of Zhang Tianyang's death was revealed by the prince when he made peace with Dong Xin last time. It turns out that Zhang Tianyang was behind everything. You have to choose the speaker. When did the club become a family business where sons and daughters inherit the business from their fathers? Li Qing frowned slightly and knocked on the table. When Zhang Tianyang heard this, he paused with the hand holding the cigar, and then smiled thoughtfully. The hall leaders were stunned for a moment, their eyes constantly switching back and forth from Li Qing and Zhang Tianyang. The entire Juyi Hall was filled with the smell of gunpowder, and all the hall masters had their eyes wandering, as if it had nothing to do with them. It doesn't matter to them who is the leader, they have to deal with it anyway. The name Hong Xin was created by Mr. Zhang Zhen, and Mr. Zhang Tianyang also made great contributions to Hong Xin. I think Mr. Zhang Tianyang should be the speaker. The prince stood up and expressed his attitude. Thank you, thank you. The hall master here has more merit than me. Zhang Tianyang emphasized the word hall master very seriously. Seeing the two of them chatting like they were in crosstalk, Li Qing also laughed angrily. In fact, he had no intention of taking over the mess of Hong Xin. Obviously, Zhang Tianyang now regarded him as a competitor. Everywhere, we were all promoted by Mr. Zhang, Brother Ji said with a smile on his face. In this way, everyone here is eligible to run for speaker, and I propose to do so now. Zhang Tianyang looked at all the hall leaders, and finally focused on Li Qing. I recommend Mr. Zhang. The prince stood up first to show his loyalty. Han Bin and Fatty Li were originally dissatisfied with Li Qing, but at this time they undoubtedly raised their hands to express their support for Zhang Tianyang. Li Qing watched several hall masters slowly raise their hands. Brother Ji also had erratic eyes, not daring to look at Li Qing, and silently raised his hands. In the end, only Li Qing was left, and everyone's eyes were focused on him. Li Qingping watched Zhang Tianyang take out a cigarette from his pocket, lit it slowly and took a deep breath, and the smoke lingered on his face. There was an indescribable ferocity, and everyone felt a hint of fear. Why are you looking at me? I'm not the hall leader, so I'm not qualified to raise my hand. The atmosphere in Juyi Hall suddenly became much more relaxed, and even several hall masters breathed a sigh of relief. They were afraid that if Li Qingzhen flipped the table, none of the people present would be able to escape from Juyi Hall. Haha, don't belittle yourself. I'll be the talker tomorrow, and you can take over your job. Seeing that the overall situation was decided, Zhang Tianyang waved his hand and said to Li Qing with a smile. Then, thank you Mr. Zhang. Li Qingpi looked at Zhang Tianyang with a smile. Not long after, the hall masters walked out of Juyi Hall one after another, and Li Qing also walked out with his younger brother. Congratulations, King Zi, Brother Ji said with a smile. Li Qing looked at Brother Ji next to him and smiled. This kind of wallflower will cheer you up when you have the upper hand, but will side with you as soon as you show weakness. But Li Qing didn't care. Anyway, he never counted on others, only trusted his own fists. Speaking of fists, Fen Yuxiu recently said that his Tiger Fist has been used to knock people into trouble. Just relying on Tiger Fist, he is already on par with Fen Yuxiu in terms of routines. Fen Yuxiu was also surprised. He originally thought that he was a martial arts prodigy, but he didn't expect that Li Qing not only had a special physique, but also had a damn high talent. But this thought only lasted for a few days, because he found that Li Qing's learning of other boxing techniques could only be described as stupid. Returning to the villa, Li Qing felt better when he saw Hong Kong students waiting at the door. "I'm not here during this period. Is everything okay at home?" Li Qing has handed over the affairs of Mongkok and Causeway Bay to Hong Kong students. After all, leaving some things to his woman can make him feel more at ease. The income is okay, but no one dares to come here to loosen flour. Hong Kong students are also very smart and know the meaning of Li Qing's words. The income comes second. The main thing is to find something to do for the younger brothers to prevent them from being too energetic. Li Qing took off his coat and handed it to Hong Kong Sheng, and kissed Hong Kong Sheng gently on the face. Hong Kong Sheng hummed, wrinkled his nose, and gently hugged the man in front of him. "What's wrong? Are you a little unhappy?" Touching her face, Li Qing found that the little woman was worried. Hong Kong Sheng touched his flat belly, looking a little melancholy. "I want a baby, but Li Qing hasn't used balloons in recent times. For some reason, she keeps getting pregnant. Then let's just work harder." Li Qing looked at the woman in front of him with a mischievous smile, and began to travel over the mountains and rivers dishonestly with his big hands. The winding path leading to the secluded place was obviously filled with gurgling water, and Li Qing also swam upstream unceremoniously. For a while, from the living room to the kitchen, and from the kitchen to the window, traces of the battle between the two were left. The next day, Zhang Tianyang's dragon head ceremony and Li Qing's appointment were held without any surprises and everything was calm. Li Qing is also focused on making money. His next goal is to capture all the docks in Xiangjiang. But something suddenly happened that hindered his plan. "Brother, Han Bin and Fatty Li won't let us take over the dock." Dahu and Ergu hurried over to complain. "Huh? Call Qiandan and Dongxiu and let's go over and take a look." Li Qing thought for a while and planned to go there in person. People were coming and going on the pier in Quaixing district. The fishermen had just returned from fishing and were collecting their catch. There was a fishy smell all over the pier. There are two people sitting opposite each other in a small stall in a black shed next to the pier. Outside the stall are some young and dangerous young people painting dragons and phoenixes. "Han Bin, if you don't keep your word, you will be stabbed 3 times. Biting the grilled fish in his hand, Li Qing looked at Han Bin sitting opposite him without blinking. At this time, Han Bin was obviously a little guilty, and his eyes kept looking around, as if he was waiting for someone. "Ahem, Li Qing, you know, Quaixing relies on this pier. Aren't you going to kill me?" Han Bin smiled bitterly, and the look on his face became more anxious. Li Qing stood up, his eyes exuding a fierce look. Han Bin was frightened by Li Qing's actions. He leaned back involuntarily, holding the handle of the chair tightly in his hands. "I will give you a share of all the goods landed in Quaixing. I didn't expect that. I still don't know how to feed you. You don't think I don't dare to kill you, do you?" He moved his finger downwards and tapped it gently on the table, only to see that his finger sank in deeply like it was inserted into tofu. "It's not me, it's..." Han Bin swallowed, with a look of horror on his face. "Hey, grilled fish, I like to eat it too." A burst of hearty laughter came from outside the shed. Hong Kong movies, I can see the loyalty value, I am not panicked at all. Author, Ban Wanqing Buletin Liang. Chapter 32. Mr. Zhang, the younger brothers outside the shed began to greet him. "Ha ha, Ah Qing, Ah Bin, it turns out to be you two." Zhang Tianyang walked in and sat down at the table without any courtesy. "Mr. Zhang, what a coincidence, you are here to eat fish too. Looking at Jiang Tianyang sitting on the chair opposite him, Li Qing smiled and greeted him. At this time, Han Bin was also relieved. What? Mr. Jiang came to Kuaixing to eat fish, and he also needs to report to you. Fatty Li picked his nose and said to Li Qing. Dry, what are you talking about? Zhang Qiandan behind Li Qing really couldn't stand others disrespecting his big brother. No rules, what does your big brother say have to do with you? What kind of boss is there, what kind of little brother is there? Hearing this, Li Qing was so angry that he laughed. This Fatty Li didn't dare to breathe in front of him before, it seems that he has a backer now. Hey, Fatty Li, you're wrong for saying that. Ah Qing is still polite. Zhang Tianyang waved his hand pretentiously. Yes, Mr. Zhang. Fatty Li bowed his head slightly, then stood up and looked at Li Qing complacently, looking like a villain who had succeeded. Mr. Zhang, if you like fish, I'll give you a bluefin tuna. This kind of fish will die once it comes out, so you should eat it while it's fresh. Li Qing glanced at Fatty Li opposite him, with murderous intent in his eyes. I don't like fish, I like elephants. Zhang Tianyang looked at Li Qing with a fake smile. Today, Han Bin and Fatty Li asked me to be a peacemaker. The dock is their main source of income. I'll make the decision. Each of them will compensate you 5 million, and forget about the dock. Zhang Tiansheng took the cigar from his younger brother and kept smoking it on the grill. Han Bin and Fatty Li also immediately stated that the money would be delivered to Li Qing without a penny less. Li Qing looked at Zhang Tianyang steadily, and then glanced at Han Bin and Fatty Li. Mr. Zhang, I once told another Mr. Zhang that you should be fair when you are in charge, otherwise it will be difficult for the younger brothers to obey you. I also give this sentence to you. After saying that, regardless of Zhang Tianyang, whose face was gradually getting ugly, he walked out of the black shed with his younger brothers. Li Qing, who walked out of the black shed, also had a gloomy face. He chewed the fish meat in his mouth with his teeth, and even crushed the fish bones. This is forcing me to eat fish. After Li Qing left, the atmosphere in the black shed was much more relaxed. Thank you, Mr. Zhang, otherwise this large pier would belong to Li Qing. Han Bin smiled and thanked Zhang Tianyang. Ha, Li Qing is a nobody. When Mr. Zhang came, he walked away in disgrace like a grandson. Fatty Li sat on a chair, constantly picking his feet, looking very proud. Isn't it, Mr. Zhang, you are so awesome today. Zhang Tianyang took a puff of his cigar and said with a smile, Fatty Li, just stay in your north corner honestly, and please wear a pair of socks in the future, don't pick your feet all day, it's disgusting. After that, Zhang Tianyang hit Fatty Li's feet. It feels good, Fatty Li said in a low voice. Zhang Tianyang was also helpless. The other hall masters were fence-sitters. It was not easy to find a hall master who clearly opposed Li Qing. Even if he was a crooked melon and a cracked date, he had to admit it. Mr. Zhang, I'm afraid Li Qing won't let it go. Han Bin was very cautious. With his understanding of Li Qing, this matter would not be let go. Don't worry, my Thai mercenaries will be here soon. When the time comes. Zhang Tianyang said half a sentence and didn't say anything else. But everyone present knew what it meant. Han Bin and Fatty Li nodded. Soon, Li Qing received 10 million from Han Bin and Fatty Li. This money may seem like a lot, but compared to the dock, it's nothing. Li Qing's smuggling business can make back the money in half a month. Brother, there's a rumor on the street that Zhang Tianyang is looking for the real murderer who killed Zhang Tiansheng. After hearing the news, Crow came to report to Li Qing as soon as possible. Li Qing shook his head secretly, this is not his purpose. He doesn't know how happy he is if Zhang Tiansheng dies. He has the hatred for the throne and the wife. He is looking for a name to deal with me. Brother, how about we? Crow made a throat-cutting gesture in front of his neck. Li Qing pondered for a while, and still shook his head. It's too obvious. We still have to stay in Hong Kong for the time being. If Zhang Tianyang dies now, most people will think it was me. Now Hong Kong still has to pay attention to face. After all, Li Qing's target is not only Hong Kong. Then boss, when can I quit Dong Xing? Crow asked depressedly. He couldn't play with other hall masters of Dong Xing. Isn't it just that he occasionally plays some perverted programs? As for looking at him like a lunatic, you better be more restrained. I heard you killed a few girls who smuggled from Java. Li Qing also looked at this little brother helplessly. If it weren't for his 100% loyalty, he would have given up on him long ago. Brother, they are all native Javanese. I didn't touch any Chinese. Crow scratched his head and said in a low voice. Ever since Crow heard Li Qing talk about the tragedy 20 years ago, he has been very interested in the native Javanese. Men are directly sunk into the sea, while women are sunk while they are hot. During this period of time, Javanese people no longer smuggle to Hong Kong. It can be said that Crow closed the smuggling door of Javanese country by himself. Brother. Crow was exchanging thoughts with Li Qing, when Zhang Qiandan rushed in. Don't you know how to knock? You're talking so excitedly, Crow muttered softly. Zhang Qiandan didn't care about Crow's temper. Something is wrong. According to the information from the Snakehead, a group of Thais are smuggled in tonight. Thais? Are there any transsexuals? Crow asked with interest. Li Qing patted Crow on the back of his head without hesitation. Be quiet. Zhang Qiandan continued, they all brought weapons. The Snakehead said he knew one of them, and he was a soldier. Li Qing's eyes condensed. Soldier. Zhang Qiandan nodded with certainty. Call all the people tonight, and we'll go and see. It's best to block them on the high seas. Also, tell the Snakehead and let him find a reason to separate the weapons and people on the other side. Li Qing ordered. Okay, brother, I'll go and make arrangements first. Zhang Qiandan came in a hurry and left in a hurry. Crow's eyes widened. Brother, I'll go tonight too. Go away, you can't expose yourself now. Glancing at the excited Crow, Li Qing cursed. Go away if you want. Now in Hong Kong, everyone knows that I'm your little brother. You never call me for such exciting things. Crow looked unhappy and muttered as he walked. Li Qing's face was dark and he rubbed his face hard. Damn, my little brothers are either funny or perverted. There is a normal one who keeps shouting about competing for the winner and life and death. He felt so stressed. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Hong Kong movies, I can see the loyalty value, I am not panicked at all. Author, Ban Wanqing Buletin Liang. Chapter 33. Late at night, the sound of a ship's motor suddenly appeared on the high seas in Hong Kong. Two smuggling boats are heading towards Xiangjiang. The cabin was full of people, mostly South Asians with dark skin, and occasionally a few mixed-race Chinese. I don't know what happened, but the two smuggling boats slowly stopped. A young man walked out of the cabin and asked the Snakehead loudly, "Hey, why did the ship stop?" The questioning look was obviously inconsistent with the identity of a cautious stowaway. "Keep your voice down, there are Hong Kong Coast Guard patrols in this area." The Snakehead lowered his voice. The young man had no doubt that he was there and planned to return to the cabin. Just as he was about to turn his head, he saw the back of his head being pressed against the cold barrel of a gun. "If you don't want to die, just don't say anything. I'll ask you questions." The young man raised his hands and nodded slowly. "The purpose of your coming to Xiangjiang?" "Help Mr. Zhang do something." The young man's voice was trembling, but he still whispered. "Which Mr. Zhang?" "Mr. Zhang Tianyang." Zhang Qiandan glanced at Li Qing's eyes, and after seeing him nodding slightly, he took out the steel wire he had prepared in his hand and strangled the young man's neck fiercely. After a while, the young man became motionless. Leave no one behind. Li Qing smoked a cigarette, and under the dim light of the boat, he looked like a demon from hell. Zhang Qiandan, Zhang Dongziu and others led their younger brothers and broke into the cabin with axe. Everyone in the cabin had no time to react, not to mention that most of the rifles were on the other boat. Gunshots rang out continuously, interspersed with a few screams. There was little decent resistance, and all the mercenaries were shot dead in the cabin. After a long time, Li Qing walked into the cabin. The boys were refilling their guns, and occasionally a few gunshots were heard. There were corpses everywhere in the cabin, but he didn't show any emotion at all. These were all sent by Zhang Tianyang to kill him. It would be a mercy not to light up the sky lanterns for them one by one. Dog tags, take them off for me. Yes, brother. Li Qing took a look and saw that the boys were working neatly and there was really no one left alive. 10 minutes later, Li Qing watched as the two smuggling boats burned and slowly sank to the bottom of the sea. Of course, the arms on the other ship have become Li Qing's trophies. Build 2 new ships for the smugglers. Li Qing ordered, ignoring the snakehead who thanked him so much, got on the boat and sailed away. 2 days later, Xiangjiang News reported, it is reported that a corpse floated out on the high seas. The face of the corpse is no longer identifiable, but judging from the clothes, it is most likely a stowaway from Southeast Asia. What is strange is that there are large and small bullet holes. Please see the report below for details. Zhang Tianyang, who was having breakfast, was stunned for a moment when he heard the news, but then he shook his head and smiled. Maid, it's another fight between gangsters and gangsters. The Vietnamese gang is getting more and more arrogant now. Zhang Tianyang thought of the Vietnamese gang, which had been quite arrogant recently, causing trouble everywhere and causing the leaders of major societies to be invited to tea by the first brother of the police force. Today is the day for the club to collect numbers. All the hall leaders came to Juyi Hall to hand in their numbers. Zhang Tianyang came to the headquarters after breakfast. He just wanted to see Li Qing's depressed face. He obviously hated me, but he couldn't do anything about me. This time, he had already figured out how to make Li Qing lose face in front of all the hall leaders. The hall masters came to Juyi Hall one after another, and Li Qing also strode in. Brother Ji looked at the suitcase Li Qing was carrying and said jokingly, "Ah Qing, you have made a lot of money recently. Pay so much." "It's not bad, there are a lot of gay brothers," Li Qing laughed. The hall masters exchanged pleasantries again. "Okay, let's start collecting the numbers now," the prince said with a smile. It was obvious that he had become the original Chen Yao-style figure, which was equivalent to Zhang Tianyang's white gloves. All the hall masters submitted statistics based on their own hall's business this month. There are more and less, but they are almost the same as before. "Mr. Zhang, Hall Master Li Qing's number is wrong." The prince looked at the account book and shouted. "What's wrong?" Zhang Tianyang asked with a smile while smoking a cigar. "There is no smuggling business at all." The prince glanced at Li Qing, who was sitting next to him. The whole place was silent, and all the hall leaders looked at each other with big eyes and small eyes. They didn't hear that their business had to be submitted to the club. But at the same time, he also looked at Li Qing with schadenfreude. Li Qing's smuggling business was indeed too enviable. Huh? Smuggling is Li Qing's own business, not the association's. Isn't it against the rules? 13th sister couldn't stand it and spoke out first. "Aimee, you don't have your own business, only the society's business. Without the society, your business will be swallowed up by others." Zhang Tianyang nodded 13th sister with a cigar, and 13th sister did not dare to speak any more. Originally, Brother Ji wanted to intercede for Li Qing. After all, he had also made a lot of money through Li Qing's smuggling. But seeing Zhang Tianyang being so domineering and decisive, He temporarily took back what he wanted to say. Li Qing was also unceremonious in his tit-for-tat confrontation with Jiang Tianyang, taking a deep breath and spitting towards the ceiling. Mr. Jiang, who doesn't know that I, Li Qing, rely on the smuggling business, and you want me to hand over the account? You are just taking food from my mouth. Depriving people of their money is like killing their parents. Ah Qing, you are where you are today all because of the club. You can't stop paying attention to the club just because you have become big. Everyone is like you, how can the club become bigger and stronger and create greater glory? Jiang Tianyang's tone was full of pride. He was using the society to pressure Li Qing. Li Qing stared at Jiang Tianyang closely and stood up suddenly. All the hall masters were shocked, thinking that Li Qing could not suppress his anger and was going to do something else to Jiang Tianyang. Okay, Mr. Jiang, you are really dedicated to the society. I surrender. All the hall masters were stunned. Li Qing actually gave in? This has never happened before. This guy is a man who will kill even the police when he is anxious, but he didn't expect to be defeated by Jiang Tianyang. Li Qing pushed the prince away, took out the suitcase from under the table, and pushed it in front of Jiang Tianyang. A total of 1.08 million, Mr. Jiang, count it? Jiang Tianyang smiled and pulled the box closer. Now he was very proud. He finally used Li Qing to establish his authority again. It seems that the day of truly controlling Hongxing is not far away. Gently opening the suitcase, surprisingly, there were no big bulls in the suitcase, but a bunch of blood-stained soldier dog tags. Due to the long time, the blood has turned dark brown, but the pungent smell of blood made all the hall masters present realize that things were not as imagined. Watching Jiang Tianyang's face change from smug to astonishment, then anger, and finally a little fear on his face. A dog tag represents a life. Others may not know, but Han Ben and Fatty Li know it very well. They both heard it from Jiang Tianyang. Han Ben's face turned pale, and he didn't know what he was thinking. He looked at Li Qing with fear in his eyes. Fatty Li was even more unbearable. Now his legs were weak. Thinking of what he said before, he felt that he would not live through tomorrow. Mr. Jiang, are these enough? Li Qing smiled and looked at Jiang Tianyang with a playful look in his eyes. Enough, enough. Very good. Jiang Tianyang's back teeth were about to break, and his eyes began to slowly fill with blood. But I think I gave too much under the eyes of everyone. Li Qing took the amount he had just handed over from the prince. This is enough. After saying that, he laughed to the sky and went out. Hong Kong movies, I can see the loyalty value, I am not panicked at all. Author, Ban Wanqing Buletin Liang. Chapter 34. After Li Qing left, Jiang Tianyang barely maintained a smile and saw off the hall leaders. After closing the door, there was a burst of hysterical venting in the Juyi Hall. A total of 108 people, all elites he created with money, were actually killed by Li Qingtuan. How could he not be angry? In the end, Li Qing's actions obviously made him lose face, and his prestige among the hall masters dropped again. At this time, Han Ben and Fatty Li came to Li Qing's company together. Han Ben, you have to speak for me. Fatty Li pulled Han Ben and kept chattering next to him. Han Ben rolled his eyes. I can't even protect myself, who cares about you? Last time, this guy relied on Jiang Tianyang's support to sneer at Li Qing. If it were him, he would sink Fatty Li into the sea. Not long after, Li Qing looked at the two people sitting opposite. What? You want to give me the dock? Li Qing looked up at the two people who were restless. Actually, there is no use for us to take the dock. Mr. Jiang asked us to do this. Fatty Li sold Jiang Tianyang without hesitation. Fatty Li sat on the sofa restrainedly. Now he obviously didn't dare to pick his feet. Yes, Li Qing, we are also in a dilemma. Han Ben also looked embarrassed. Li Qing thought for a moment and pointed at Han Ben. Okay, I'll take yours. You can go, he ordered Hanben to be kicked out. Hanben breathed a sigh of relief. Taking it away meant that he was fine. He looked at Fatty Lee sympathetically. This unlucky kid's fault is all in his mouth. The sound of the door closing sounded, and Fatty Lee came back to his senses. Brother Ching, what about me? There was obviously a cry in his voice. He was really afraid. More than 100 lives would be lost at the last word. Who wouldn't be afraid? They come out just to get money, and they act like butchers. Fatty Lee's legs went weak and he knelt on the ground. You are not enough. Li Qing looked at Fatty Lee, who was already kneeling on the ground, his eyes calm. Whatever you want, as long as I have it. Fatty Lee made his last effort. Bah, Li Qing lit the cigarette and took a puff. I want your magazine. Fatty Lee was stunned. He didn't expect Li Qing to copy his old skills. Brother Qing, running a magazine is a matter for cultural people. You are not suitable. Fatty Lee cried sadly. It's okay, I have educated people under me. Fatty Lee cursed in his heart, there are people from Hammer culture who are all humming butchers. But in the end, Fatty Lee still compromised. There was no way he was afraid of death. Li Qing and the others were crazy. If they didn't agree, they might be killed by a black gun when they came out for breakfast tomorrow. In the end, Li Qing not only took over the dock, but also took over Fatty Lee's magazine, taking the first step to become a cultural person. Later, the magazine's social media was handed over to Dahu and Ergu to manage, and the magazine's name was also changed to Men Must Pretend. In the dignified private room, the waiter hurried out after delivering the dishes. He didn't know that the two of them were well-known club bosses in Hong Kong's world, and they could shock the world even by stomping their feet. Li Xiao from Liansheng and Zhang Tianyang from Hongxing were sitting in a private room, drinking and mingling with each other. Master Li, it's not easy for you to be a talker, right? Zhang Tianyang pointed out. Li Xiao smiled and waved his hand carelessly. We are thriving with Liansheng, and we are very united, but I heard that Hongxing and Li Qing are on the rise. Why are they ready for the next term now? Li Xiao also kept provoking Zhang Tianyang's nerves. Haha, as far as I know, Big D is eyeing Liansheng. It seems that he is the next person to talk to Liansheng. Zhang Tianyang replied, not to be outdone. You and I join forces, I'll help you kill Big D, and you help me kill Li Qing, how about that? Make a deal. The two looked at each other and smiled, raised their glasses together, and drank a full glass of wine. In this way, the two famous gangsters began to shamelessly plot against their subordinates. Since Dahu and Ergu took over the magazine, they have become much more honest and have not caused trouble outside. Under the operation of the two men, the magazine's sales have increased a lot. Li Qing was also very pleased, and suddenly on a whim, he took Zhang Qiandan to the magazine to visit. When I arrived at the magazine, I frowned and looked at the magazine's tightly closed door. Call the door. Zhang Qiandan was not polite and slapped the door vigorously. Not long after, the boy inside opened the door, and a group of people walked into the magazine office. Brother Big Tiger and Brother Ergu are taking pictures inside, the younger brother said respectfully. Take a photo, it's like shooting a short movie. Li Qing was the first to push open the door of the photography studio, and was stung by the smell of heather. The lights in the room were a little dim. Pop, Zhang Qiandan turned on all the lights, and everyone was shocked by what they saw. My day, you guys are having a bank party, Li Qing blurted out. In the room, Dahu and Ergu were naked, holding cameras and taking pictures of the naked woman. Brother, why are you here? Look, they are all good new things. Ergu shook the cannon as he walked. Li Qing felt that the smell of heather was stronger. You, stay away from me and put on some clothes. A few minutes later, Dahu and Ergu stood dumbly 8 feet away from Li Qing. I asked you to be in charge of the magazine, But you stole the magazine. Li Qing scolded the two useless younger brothers. Brother, no, I was just patting it and it came to my mind. Dahu muttered softly. Yeah, it's mainly because these girls are too pretty, with breasts like balls and round buttocks. I really can't bear it. I've tried very hard. Ergo looked at Li Qing cautiously. Li Qing looked at the two people with dark circles on their faces. Damn, you two will die sooner or later. He glanced at the naked women, swallowed his saliva, and hurried out of the door. He was afraid that he couldn't hold on. After walking a few steps, Li Qing found that Zhang Qiandan and Zhang Dongxiu didn't follow him, and looked back strangely. He saw that the two were staring at the women, and a small tent had been erected under their crotches. Damn! You are so useless. I'll give you half an hour. The two cheered and rushed towards a group of women, causing the women to scream. Li Qing shook his head when he saw this scene. It seemed that the two of them were frustrated. He glanced at Feng Yuxiu next to him. Do you want to? What are you thinking about? I don't like anyone except Chen Shui. Feng Yuxiu's face changed slightly, and he looked at Li Qing with disdain. Ah, you are noble, you are amazing. Li Qing raised his thumb. If I hadn't seen the little tent in your crotch, I would really believe it. Just when Li Qing was sitting on the sofa downstairs, watching TV boredly, the phone rang. Hello? Brother, our goods have been seized by the police. Hong Kong movies, I can see the loyalty value, I am not panicked at all. Author, Ban Wanqing Buletin Liang. Chapter 35. Brother, not only one smuggling ship has been inspected, but the goods at other ports and terminals have also been inspected. The boy on the other end of the phone said urgently. What? Li Qing suddenly stood up and slammed his fist on the table. Several cracks suddenly appeared on the solid wood table. His eyes began to become bloodshot, and a chilling air spread. Even Feng Yuxiu next to him looked at him sideways. Smuggling is his main source of funds. Once something goes wrong, it will affect his subsequent plans. Without waiting for the other boys, Li Qing took Feng Yuxiu out of the magazine. No matter how much money you spend, find out who is responsible for this. The policeman is not a clairvoyant, there must be something fishy in it. After giving instructions to the younger brother beside him, Li Qing tried his best to calm down his mood. He had just estimated that the goods lost this time were worth nearly 10 million. He didn't have much money, and he was worried that his smuggling channels and routes would be controlled by others. Okay, brother, the younger brother responded and quickly retreated. He Lian Sheng, Tang Kao. Jimmy, how's your business doing lately? Li Xiao picked up the teapot on the table, poured a cup of tea, and pushed it to the opposite side. His godson is his god of wealth, and he is a good hand in business, but if he is a little timid, most of the business is gray, and pure black rarely touches it. Well, high imitation goods have been more difficult to make recently, and you can earn less. Jimmy thought for a while, looked at Li Xiao opposite and said. After all, Li Qing monopolized most of the smuggling channels in Xiangjiang, and sometimes the stolen goods were supplied. At this time, he remembered Li Qing's words again, asking him if he would be better now. Jimmy shook his head again in his mind. Overdue. My godfather would not agree. I have a batch of goods here. You can distribute them for me. Remember not to distribute them in Xiangjiang. It is best to sell them to Southeast Asia. Mr. Le fumbled with the purple clay pot and raised his eyes at Jimmy. Drink tea first. Jimmy's eyes narrowed when he heard this. He picked up the teacup, took a sip and said with a smile, Godfather, do you have such a good business to take care of me? Everyone in the whole company and Lian Shen knew that Li Xiao would not be so kind as to give Jimmy a chance to make money because he had nothing to gain. The shady guy who came out of the police station. Li Xiao took a sip of tea and said lightly. Jimmy felt a little relieved. It was just illegal goods seized by the Coast Guard, so there was no big problem. As long as it's not bulk cargo in Xiangjiang, Tiazi doesn't care, and besides, they can still make a fortune. Then thank you Godfather, we of you. Jimmy stretched out his palm and turned it over. According to the past rules, this kind of black goods is usually divided into 60 and 40 cents. After all, the Godfather in name only suffers a small loss and gets an extra 10%. 4-6, I'm 6, and you're 4. Li Xiao glanced at Jimmy gently. The smile on Jimmy's face froze, and he picked up the teacup to hide his emotions. This batch of goods does not belong to me alone. There are other relationships that need to be taken care of. Apparently Li Xiao saw Jimmy's reluctance and explained it smoothly. Finally, Jimmy bit the bullet and agreed. A few days later, batches of goods arrived at Jimmy's warehouse. The box was obviously moisture-proof, and Jimmy was also curious about what was inside, but Li Xiao was so careful and warned him not to bulk goods in Xiangjiang. Open it, be careful, Jimmy directed his younger brother to open the box. The box was gently pried up with a crowbar, and the lid was lifted at once. Jimmy approached with a smile and looked inside the box, only to see small boxes wrapped in waterproof membranes. Picking up a box and tearing off the waterproof film, the logo of the box was recorded, Shenyang Mobile Phone. Jimmy's pupils dilated instantly, his face became extremely pale, and even the hand holding the box trembled. Qian Liliang, this is a big deal. Looking at the boxes of goods, Jimmy felt his head was a little dizzy. All of Li Qing's goods. A few days ago, he heard that Li Qing's goods were swept away by the police, and he gloated for several days. Who would have thought that the goods he wanted to break up would turn out to be that batch of goods? He felt that his godfather was going to kill him. Nail it up, let's wait for this batch of goods. Jimmy put the box back into the box. Brother, this is a rare thing. The market has been out of stock recently, and the price has nearly doubled. The younger brother looked at the phone with greedy eyes. Jimmy glanced at his younger brother from the corner of his eye and said, I'm afraid you'll die. Then he walked out of the warehouse with a heavy heart. The younger brother turned his eyes, looked left and right, and secretly put the newly opened mobile phone into his pocket. Jimmy paced back and forth in the office, gently pinching his temple with his right hand. He didn't know what to do. Tell Li Xin? Li Xiao will not let him go. Likewise, if Li Qing knew about it, he wouldn't let him go. After thinking about it for a long time, there was still no way to have both ends, so I had to put it in the warehouse first. It was impossible to disperse, and besides, it was impossible to get past Li Qing by water. A few days later, Zhang Qiandan hurried into Li Qing's office. Brother, we found it? Li Qing raised his eyes and looked at Zhang Qiandan, who was breathing heavily. Let's talk after you catch your breath. Catch a guy who sells bulk goods. The item number he is selling is a new product sent from South Korea. Li Qing's eyes lit up. Well, bring him here and I'll ask him personally. After a while, the young and dangerous boy kneeled in front of him looking at his bruised nose and swollen face. He knelt down kindly and asked young and dangerous to raise his head. Tell me, who do you belong to? Why is my goods in your hands? Master Qing, it's really not mine, I'm just a little boy. Without saying a word, Li Qing picked up the dagger on the table and thrust it into the short mule's palm. The dagger was nailed deeply into the ground, and the dwarf mule screamed. If you don't say anything, I'll cut off your fingers one by one. Li Qing wiped the blood on his hands on the short mule. I said. The short mule knelt on the ground, trying his best to suppress the severe pain in his hands. Jimmy, it's the goods from Jimmy's warehouse. His brother said he has a whole warehouse. The short mule was afraid that if he spoke too slowly, his fingers would be cut off. Jimmy? And Lian Sheng. Touching the stubble on his chin, Li Qing's eyes flashed fiercely. No matter who touches my goods, I will let his whole family lie on the bed. Chen Hai, Li Qing pointed to the short mule on the ground. Zhang Qiandan dragged the begging dwarf mule out of the office without saying a word. He Lian Sheng? Jimmy? Mr. Li? Or Big D? Li Qing wrote the names of the three people on the paper and analyzed them one by one. Jimmy doesn't have that much courage, Big D doesn't have the brains. Besides, Big D wants to be the next leader, so he won't cause trouble at this time. Li Xiao. This old silver coin can't afford to start early if there is no profit, there must be someone behind it. Li Qing was still not sure, but among the three, Li Xiao was the most likely. He circled Li Xiao's name heavily. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Hong Kong movies, I can see the loyalty value, I am not panicked at all. Author, Ban Wanqing Buletin Liang. Chapter 36. In the past few days, people have been keeping an eye on Jimmy, but Jimmy stayed in the hall like a coward, which made Li Qing very uncomfortable. Let's go find Long General. I took the people to visit Long Gen of Helianchen. Speaking of Long Gen, it was also miserable. When he was in power, he was always overshadowed by Dumbledore. Now he is still living in an apartment after retirement. If Jimmy hadn't helped him, he would have slept on the street. Uncle Long Gen, you are so elegant. Upon entering, Li Qing saw Long Gen serving the flowers and plants. Who are you? Long Gen took off his reading glasses and took a look at the person to make sure he didn't recognize him. Hongxing Li Qing. When Li Qing debuted, Long Gen had already retired, so the two had never met. But Long Gen had heard of Li Qing's name, and he once killed dozens of people in order to prevent flour from entering the Tuo land. Respect your name, haha, what are you doing here, Mr. Li? Long Gen also guessed that Li Qing must have come with bad intentions. I can't invite Jimmy, so I have to ask you to come and invite me. The mobile phone in Zhang Dongzio's hand was on speakerphone, and he had obviously already dialed Jimmy's number. Brother Qing, come to me if you have any questions, don't disturb the old man. I'll wait for you at Long Gen's house and give you an hour. After speaking, Li Qing hung up the phone. Jimmy across from him gritted his teeth as he listened to the busy tone on his cell phone. Uncle Long Gen had always taken good care of me back then. If it hadn't been for him, I would have been dead on the street. Without hesitation, Jimmy put on his coat and hurried to Long Gen's house. Half an hour later, Jimmy arrived at Long Gen's house. Li Qing drank tea and looked at Jimmy, who hurriedly opened the door and entered. Half an hour, not bad. After looking at the time on his watch, Li Qing continued, I never knew you were so brave and dared to touch my goods. Brother Qing, I didn't touch your goods. Jimmy nervously took 2 steps forward and explained eagerly. But in your hands, don't deny it. Li Qing pointed at Jimmy and scolded loudly. Jimmy's face changed slightly, his lips trembled, and he said nothing more. Big D, Li Qing asked tentatively, staring into Jimmy's eyes. Jimmy's eyes remained unchanged. That's less fun. Jimmy pursed his lips tightly and still didn't speak. The atmosphere in the room became more and more solemn. Li Qing's subordinates all put their hands in their arms and held the handles of their guns, waiting for Li Qing's order. Well, it's Mr. Li. Jimmy finally said it. He knew that if he didn't say it, Li Qing would really kill someone. After saying it, I felt much more relaxed. Bang bang. Li Qing tapped his fingers lightly on the coffee table and fell into deep thought. He and Li Xiao have no friendship or interests, unless. Throughout Xiangjiang, Li Qing had many enemies, but few dared to attack him. But now those who are familiar with his smuggling route must be people from Hongxing. And there is only one person in Hongxing who is qualified to cooperate with Li Xiao, and that is Zhang Tianyang. It seems that not only is he doing something behind his back, but Zhang Tianyang is not idle either, Li Qing said secretly in his heart. Brother Qing, I will return the goods to you. Please let me and Uncle Long Jen go. Jimmy begged. Li Qing glanced at Jimmy, took out a gun and put it on Long Jen's head. Let me let you go, it's very simple, you follow me. The person I value has two choices, one is to die, the other is to be my little brother. Jimmy looked at Li Qing silently, and then nodded slowly after a long time. At this time, Li Qing looked above Jimmy's head, and the entry loyalty value 40% appeared. As expected, it is a tough melon. It doesn't matter. It will always rise slowly. If it is still like this after a year, then, haha. Now I'll give you a task. Scatter this batch of goods and let me see what you're capable of. I have long known that Jimmy is very good at business, and this time Li Qing also tried his best. Jimmy nodded. If this batch of goods didn't belong to Li Qing, he would have dispersed it long ago. Maybe all the funds will be withdrawn by now. The second thing was that Jimmy made an appointment with Big D to have dinner with Gu Guangchun in the evening. At night, have backbone. Jimmy, you street boy, if you dare to invite me to dinner, be careful your godfather spanks you. Before I even entered the door, I heard Big D making a noise. Huh, Big D pushed open the door and was stunned for a moment when he saw Li Qing. Brother D, you guys are talking and I'll go out first. Jimmy walked out of the room sensibly. Li Qing smiled and looked at Big D, who was stunned on the spot. What? Big D doesn't recognize me anymore. Damn, Li Qing. Big D sat down carelessly, picked his nose and looked at him and said, what do you want from me? What about the conversation with Lian Sheng? When Big D heard this, he paused and said, damn, what does Lian Sheng talker have to do with you? You talkers are involved in my business, do you think it has anything to do with it? Big D laughed and was very happy. Anyone who had a grudge against Li Xiao was his friend. Li Qing smiled, picked up the wine, and clinked the glasses with Big D. This idiot, everyone in Xiangjiang knows that you, Li Qing, are not easy to mess with, yet he still messes with you. Big D smiled and handed Li Qing a cigarette and said happily. He provoked me because of Zhang Tianyang, the leader of Hongxing. Li Qing said straight to the point. Actually, we are both in the same situation. Li Qing took a puff of cigarette and looked at Big D, who was deep in thought. Yes, both of them are feared by the boss, both of them are strong, both of them are rich, and the most important thing is that both of them are threats to their respective bosses. Since Zhang Tianyang dares to use Li Xiao to move me, Li Xiao is also very likely to use Zhang Tianyang. Li Qing continued to induce. Then what do you say we should do? Big D was smoking a cigarette, obviously not enough brain cells, and couldn't think of any good ideas. Wait. Wait. Wait for them to show their flaws, the fox's tail will be exposed sooner or later. Li Qing said mysteriously. Okay, then wait. I'll call you as soon as there is news. I'm on 24 hours. The two clinked glasses again, smiled tacitly, and the temporary offensive and defensive alliance was established. A week passed, everything was calm, and even Li Qing doubted his guess. Another day passed, which happened to be Saturday, and Big D finally called. Hello, Li Qing, Master Li invited me to go fishing, and it seems that Zhang Tianyang from Hongxing is also coming. The excited voice of Big D came from the other end of the phone. I finally waited for it. Damn, I even brought my phone with me when I was dating girls these days. Okay, send me the location later. Don't worry, I'll always follow you. Li Qing's eyes condensed and he said with a smile. And Big D, remember to wear a helmet when fishing. Big D was stunned and looked at the phone that was already busy. Stupid, why wear a helmet when fishing? Just bring your little brother with you secretly. Hong Kong movies, I can see the loyalty value, I am not panicked at all. Author, Banwan Qingbuletin Liang. Chapter 37. Big D has already sent me the fishing location. Li Qing looked at the address and narrowed his eyes. Taiyou? It's sparsely populated. It's really a good place to kill people and bury their bodies. There was plenty of sunshine on Sunday morning. Li Qing sat in the car and blew in the air conditioner, staring closely at the two cars in front. Sitting in one of the cars were Big D and Le Xiao. Master Le, what are you doing? You're just catching a fish, but how far are you going? Big D glanced at Mr. Le who was driving and asked loudly. Fishing in the wild is fun, don't be in a hurry. We're almost here. Le Xiaopai drove the car with a smile on his face, not noticing that there were several cars following them. Big D knew that his younger brother was behind him, so he felt confident. Look at how cool you are, how can you be the talker? I'll be the one next term. The smile on Mr. Li's face was a little stiff, and he clenched the steering wheel tightly with both hands. The joints of his fingers were a little white due to the excessive force. We finally arrived at the fishing spot. Mr. Le had already been there yesterday. It was definitely a beautiful place for burial. Even the pits had been dug. At this time Zhang Tianyang also got out of another car. Mr. Zhang, you are so interested in finding such a quiet place. Big D took a puff of his cigar and said. Big D, let's bet today on who can catch the most. Zhang Tianyang said with a smile. Okay, I'm going to make you lose all your panties. Li Qing stayed in the car quietly, watching the three of them slowly walk down the river embankment and choose a suitable place to fish. Hey, you two are so close to me, how can you catch fish? Big D looked at the two people on the left and right strangely, and muttered to himself. But when he thought that his younger brother was not far away, he paid too much attention. When Li Qing came down with his men, he just happened to sink them into the river together. You can catch it, don't worry, Le Xiao said with a smile. As time passed, Le Xiao suddenly stood up and said, I'm going to pee. Big D didn't even look back and said mockingly, Maid, are you suffering from kidney deficiency? Le Xiao found the stone that was placed next to it yesterday, carefully moved it, and quietly came behind Big D. He hit Big D hard on the head. Big D felt his head buzz, and something hot flowed out of his head. He subconsciously touched it and realized it was blood. When he turned around, he saw that it was Mr. Le. He was about to shout for help, but Zhang Tianyang had already covered his mouth. At this moment, Big D remembered what Li Qing had told him to wear a helmet when fishing. Mad, if I had known, I would have worn a helmet. Le Xiao stepped forward and hit Big D a few more times with boom boom. Until Big D's head turned into a rotten watermelon in the blink of an eye. At this time, Li Qing led a group of melon-eating brothers to watch the whole process of killing. No, there's also Big D's little brother and Jimmy. Qian Lilyang, stop. Big D's younger brother became anxious when he saw his elder brother being shot in the head, and rushed down the river embankment like the wind. The two people under the river embankment were stunned when they heard the sound, and saw Big D's younger brother rushing down with a machete. I was killed by you bastard. Didn't you say there is no one in this place? Zhang Tianyang scolded Mr. Le as he ran. In order for fewer people to know, he didn't even bring a driver with him today. If he was chased, he would definitely be hacked to death. Le Xiao also threw down the stone and ran in the direction of the car. He never expected that he would be discovered after killing Big D, and he was actually Big D's younger brother. When did Big D have such an IQ? He also knows how to ambush some younger brothers. All Mr. Le knew was that he had to get back to the car immediately or else he would be chopped into pieces. After all, Zhang Tianyang had been pampered for many years, and coupled with his weight, his speed also slowly dropped. Le Xiao gradually surpassed Zhang Tianyang and passed him by. Master Le, wait for me, Zhang Tianyang shouted desperately. Mr. Le rode away without looking back, seeing that he was getting closer and closer to the car. Li Qing stood on the shore, holding his arms and watching this scene, not anxious at all. Slowly walked down the river embankment and looked at Big D's smashed head. I told you to wear a helmet, hey, this is life. The corners of Jimmy's mouth twitched next to him. He seemed to be a normal person. He didn't even wear a helmet when fishing, right? The two people who were being chased finally arrived in front of the car one after another. They looked back and looked at the pursuers who were still dozens of meters away. Hurry up, Li Xiao, who climbed into the car first, urged Zhang Tianyang, who was panting behind him. Zhang Tianyang originally wanted to drive his own car, but in a hurry, he threw his coat with the car keys on the fishing gear. After both got into the car, they planned to drive away. But the cold barrel of the gun on the back of his head made the atmosphere in the whole car solemn. Brother, as long as you let us go, money is not a problem, Li Xiao said, pretending to be calm. Let us go, we'll give you whatever you want. Zhang Tianyang raised his hands and echoed. Stop talking nonsense and get out of the car. Otherwise we will shoot. Zhang Dongzhou pushed the gun forward. The two had no choice but to get out of the car honestly. The younger brother chasing after them instantly surrounded the two of them. Brother Cheng. Brother Jimmy. The younger brothers slowly made way for a passage, accompanied by the voice of the younger brother saying hello. Li Qing and Jimmy came to the two of them. Mr. Zhang, long time no see. Li Qing, Zhang Tianyang tried his best to suppress his emotions and showed his trademark smile. Ah Qing, it was all young Master Li's fault. I was just fishing. Who would have thought that he would kill Didi? Li Qing looked at Zhang Tianyang with an innocent look and chuckled. Mr. Zhang, you are the leader of Hongxing. I will definitely not let you die here today. After that, he stepped forward to tidy up Zhang Tianyang's wrinkled and bloody shirt. Jimmy, I will take Zhang Tianyang back. Don't worry, I will give you an explanation. Jimmy is the boss here and in Liansheng. Jimmy nodded. Brother Qing, what should we do about this? Jimmy asked as he pulled Li Qing to the side. After all, he was his godfather. Being hacked to death on the spot also affected him. Stupid, send a letter to Didi's wife. Give it to her. Don't interfere with other things, Li Qing instructed. Jimmy's eyes lit up and he nodded immediately. Li Qing took Zhang Tianyang into the car and drove towards Zhuolong's room. Thank you, Ah Cheng. If it weren't for you, I would have died here. Zhang Tianyang looked back with lingering fear, and it was obvious that Li Xiao was being beaten. Mr. Zhang, you participated in the murder of the leader of Xuanwan. I can let you go, and He Liansheng will not let you go either. As one of the old-fashioned societies in Hong Kong, He Liansheng will never allow a hall master to die unclearly. As for Li Xiao, he will most likely be punished by family law. Hongxing also has to give an explanation to He Liansheng. Zhang Tianyang has been in the society since he was a child. Of course, he knows the rules inside, and he also knows that he, as the leader, will probably not be able to be the leader. Zhang Tianyang's eyes flickered, and he patted Li Qing on the shoulder. Don't worry, Ah Qing, I recommend you to be the leader of Hongxing. Hong Kong movies, I can see the loyalty value, I am not panicked at all. Author, Ban Wanqing Buletin Liang. Chapter 38. Li Qing looked at Zhang Tianyang with contempt. What? You want to leave this mess of Hongxing to me? Unless Zhang Tianyang died, there would be a battle between Hongxing and He Liansheng. Zhang Tianyang's smile gradually disappeared, because he found that this was not the way back to Hongxing headquarters. Where are you taking me? Zhang Tianyang asked with a tremor. Don't worry, Mr. Zhang, I won't take you to eat fish. Li Qing also patted Zhang Tianyang's shoulder, and he could clearly feel Zhang Tianyang trembling. Not long after, the convoy arrived at an inconspicuous warehouse in Kowloon. Brother, you are finally here. What you want is too difficult to get. Dehua walked up and complained. Besides, I grilled some, it's super unpalatable. You are gerecht. Li Qing looked at this pair of crouching dragon and phoenix, and was also speechless for a while, two pure funny people. Let the younger brothers escort Jiang Tianyang into the warehouse. Jiang Tianyang looked around in horror. He finally felt scared now. His dead brother was probably killed by Li Qing. Looking at the pale Jiang Tianyang, Li Qing smiled, knowing that Mr. Jiang likes to eat elephants. I specially shipped it from Thailand. Don't be polite. Jiang Tianyang looked at the bloody elephant meat on the table, and his heart was filled with despair. Seeing that Jiang Tianyang did not move, Dahu, Ergo, help Mr. Jiang. Dahu and Ergo walked forward, grabbed the elephant meat and stuffed it into Jiang Tianyang's mouth. Half an hour later, Dahu came to Li Qing with his head down. Brother, I didn't control it well, and I was stuffed to death with one pot. Li Qing returned to the warehouse and looked at Jiang Tianyang lying on the ground, his eyes wide open, his abdomen bulging high. Sink into the sea, Li Qing threw the burning cigarette butt on Jiang Tianyang's face and walked out. No one expected that the dignified leader of Hongxin would be stuffed to death. It can only be said that Li Qing is honest. Jiang Tianyang said to eat elephants, so let him eat his fill. After Li Qing dealt with Jiang Tianyang, he was about to go back to his villa to rest, but he was unexpectedly blocked by a woman at the door. Big D's sister-in-law, what's up? It turned out to be Big D's poor widow. Big D's sister-in-law, wearing a black dress, came to Li Qing. Li Qing's eyes kept scanning Big D's sister-in-law up and down. Sure enough, the widow was a YYDS. No man could easily refuse. Chad, Big D's sister-in-law took a puff of a lady's cigarette and spit it on Li Qing's face. Feeling a minty fragrance coming, Li Qing took a deep breath. Sister-in-law is still good. Sister-in-law is caring. The two took a car to find a restaurant and looked at each other in the private room. Big D is dead, and Dengbo of the society has spoken. Follow the rules of the society and expel Li Xiao from Heliangen. Li Qing looked at the woman opposite who was obviously drunk. Well, that's good. The rules of Heliangen are big, and this can't be life for life. With a sneer, Li Qing had obviously guessed what Heliangen was doing. But I don't accept it, especially since Uncle Deng has issued an order that no one is allowed to touch young Master Li. At least young Master Li must not die while this old man is alive. Big Sister D's eyes began to turn red, and she slammed the cup heavily on the table. Li Qing said nothing. It had nothing to do with him, just watch the show. I want young Master Li to pay with his life, and only you, Li Qing, can do it in Hong Kong. Big Sister D looked at Li Qing steadily. Sister-in-law, you overestimate me. This matter is very difficult to handle. Li Qing played with the glass, his tone a little frivolous. It's not difficult for you. Big Sister D stood up and leaned forward to look at Li Qing. Suddenly she took Li Qing's right hand and put it in her lapel. Li Qing stroked the warm roundness. Well, if Big Sister-in-law insists on doing so, it's not impossible to do. Big Sister D was drunk, her eyes were watery, and she couldn't tell whether it was love or revenge. With the double buff of the widow and sister-in-law, Li Qing reluctantly agreed. But he only satisfied his hand addiction. If he wanted to achieve a home run, he had to wait until he killed Li Xiao. After enjoying the oral skills of Di's sister-in-law, Li Qing returned home and began to think carefully. The reason why he agreed to Di's sister-in-law was not because of sexual desire, but to prepare for future plans. The Heliangen Club is different from others. His power is almost in the hands of several old guys. Especially Dengbo, in order to completely control Heliangen, every time he chooses a person in charge, he will choose the weakest one. Li Xiao is the best example. Li Xiao is incomparable with Di. In terms of strength, financial resources, and younger brothers, Di completely crushes Li Xiao. But Dengbo just recommended Li Xiao to take the position, so that it is easier to control the entire Heliangen. It seems that to kill Li Xiao, We still have to start with Deng Bo. Li Qing's eyes narrowed into a slit. The two leaders of Hongxing died in his hands. He didn't mind adding another life to Deng Bo. And for a senior emperor like Deng Bo, he had to be more decisive. If he died, He Liansheng would probably have a lot of people applauding. After Li Qing made up his mind, he asked Jimmy to take him to find Deng Bo. The next day, Jimmy, Li Qing, and others drove to Deng Bo's main hall. Looking at the wooden main hall, Li Qing chuckled and sought fame. The dignified He Liansheng's emperor actually lived in such a remote place. I'm afraid no one would believe it. Walking into the door and going up to the second floor, I saw Deng Bo drinking tea with Long Zhen. Long Zhen was also sent by Li Qing in advance. Are you Li Qing from Hongxing? Uncle Deng slowly picked up the teacup without even raising his eyes. Haha, I've heard of Uncle Deng for a long time, and I'm here to visit you today. Li Qing greeted politely. Uncle Deng didn't react at all, and he picked up the teacup and took a sip slowly. You are a Hongxing double flower red stick, what qualifications do you have to come to see me? Let's ask Zhang Tianyang to come. After saying that, he turned the teacup upside down on the tea table, obviously meaning to send him away. Li Qing saw Uncle Deng's movements, and couldn't help but exert force on his feet, and cracks appeared on the wooden floor. Uncle Deng, you're so old, you should drink more tea at home. The world is not the same as before. Be careful that the waves will drown you. Uncle Deng turned his head and stared at Li Qing's eyes. Li Qing didn't show any weakness and glared back directly. The air in the whole hall became much heavier, and Jimmy felt a little breathless. Uncle Deng, Brother Qing didn't mean that. Jimmy hurried forward to explain. Brother Qing? It seems that Jimmy is planning to change jobs. Uncle Deng stood up slowly. Although he was short and fat, he had been in a high position for a long time, which made him have a kind of impressive momentum. Li Qing, there will be a battle with Liansheng and Hongxing, I said. Uncle Deng stretched out his finger and pointed at Li Qing. Li Qing smiled nonchalantly and spread his hands. Uncle Deng, you will not survive today, I said. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Hong Kong movies, I can see the loyalty value, I am not panicked at all. Author, Ban Wanqing Buletin Liang. Chapter 39. Uncle Deng stared at Li Qing with disbelief. In these years, I have never seen such a brave person. You are very good. Uncle Deng pointed at Li Qing while covering his heart. Uncle Deng stood up on crutches, glanced at Li Qing with sinister eyes, and slowly walked towards the stairs. Dumber, do you know Hot Wheels? Li Qing looked at Deng Bo's slightly trembling body and said with a smile. I don't care about Hot Wheels, I just know that tomorrow is your death anniversary. Uncle Deng said in a deep voice without looking back. Li Qing's attitude just now made him very angry, and this time he would do anything to establish his power. Li Qing winked at Zhang Dongxiu, who slowly walked behind Uncle Deng and gave him a gentle push. I saw Dumble rolling down the stairs like a meatball, accompanied by a huge landing sound. Jimmy and Long Zhen were both stunned by Zhang Dongxiu's operation, and then realized that Li Qing didn't want to let Uncle Deng get out alive at all. Dumble fell down the stairs with a bloody head. Zhang Dongxiu walked downstairs and tested Uncle Deng's breath and tone. In the dull eyes of Jimmy and others, he picked up Dumble and walked up to the second floor. He warmly helped Dumbledore get into position, and with a gentle push, Dumbleby rolled down the stairs with a grunt. After 2 attempts, the old Dumble couldn't hold on anymore and stopped breathing in a coma. Jimmy was numb when he saw Zhang Dongxiu's sexy tricks. Is this the Emperor of Liansheng and his mother dead like this? Things are about to get serious. Li Qing looked at Jimmy's pale face and said, don't worry, it has nothing to do with us that Uncle Deng fell to death by himself. Long Zhen can testify. At this time, Long Zhen, who was standing by, realized why Li Qing had to come to Uncle Deng's house for tea today. After all, there was an uncle who was with Lian Sheng, so no one would believe that Li Qing killed him. "Let's go, Jimmy, you and Long Zhen clean up the aftermath." Li Qing said hello, put on his sunglasses, stepped over Uncle Deng's body, and walked out of the main room in a swagger. It wasn't until Li Qing walked out that Long Zhen dared to speak in a low voice, "Tisk tisk, ruthless and decisive in killing, but he is good to his younger brother." It seems that Li Qing is a person who can achieve great things. Jimmy shook his head. Now that Lian Sheng's talker and the Supreme Emperor were dead, a battle for the throne would inevitably start, and it would be another troubled time. Li Qing walked out of the main room, took out his mobile phone and dialed the number that Sister D left yesterday. "Hello? Things are done, you can deal with Li Xiao yourself." After speaking, he hung up the phone without waiting for a reply. He doesn't have to worry about what happens next. After all, Sister D wants to take revenge herself. It wasn't until late in the evening that MRSD called and invited Li Qing to watch a good show. When we arrived at the agreed-upon location, it was another warehouse. Xiangjiang associations usually choose warehouses for their business affairs. They are convenient, have few people, and have a lot of space. However, the sound insulation effect is a bit poor. As soon as I took Zhang Dongzhou into the warehouse, I saw a huge iron cage, and Mr. Li was sitting miserably in the cage. There is a huge contrast with Sister D, who has a good figure outside the iron cage. "Li Qing, I invite you to watch a cage fight today." Sister D looked at Li Qing with a charming smile, but said the most cold-blooded words. "Save me, Li Qing, as long as you save me, all my money will be yours." Mr. Li looked at the incoming man and hurriedly leaned on the iron cage and shouted. He doesn't want to die, he still has a lot of money to spend, and he hasn't had enough fun in this fancy world. Confused, "If you die, your money is mine too." Li Qing looked at Li Xiao in the cage with a smile and said, "Come on, let the dogs in." Sister D waved her hand and said to the younger brother, "I saw my younger brother driving 5 or 6 stray wolf dogs into iron cages. These are wild dogs that have been hungry for days." Sister-in-law D said, but her face showed the pleasure of getting revenge. Li Qing looked at Sister D. She was wearing sunglasses and an armband with the word filial piety on her arm, which reminded him involuntarily of the widow in the movie Little Life. He slowly approached and smelled a charming perfume from Sister D's body. Li Qing stepped forward and hugged her waist, looking at her with a smile. Sister D felt Li Qing's hot palm on her waist, and a blush appeared on her face. "You guys go out first, I have something to talk to Mr. Li." Sister D pretended to be dignified, but the tremor in her voice betrayed her. Li Qing also signaled Zhang Dongzhou to take his younger brother out. When the younger brothers walked out, Li Qing walked up to her and sniffed her neck vigorously. "Chanel No. 5, Li Qing said softly. The unique smell made Li Qing a little excited. In this way, the two of them looked at each other, sensing each other's thoughts from the other's eyes. Everything falls into place. Until Li Xiao died completely, the two reached their destination. For a long time, Li Qing's fingers traced Sister D's smooth skin. Sister D stood up, straightened her clothes, and glared at Li Qing charmingly. "Now we and Lian Sheng are leaderless, do you have any ideas?" Li Qing straightened his clothes and said while looking at the beauty in front of him. "Me? Is it okay?" "Jimmy, can Dong Guanze agree?" Apart from Big D, Jimmy and Dong Guanze stand out the most in Lian Sheng. No matter how strong she is still a woman. As long as I say yes. The prerequisite is that you must be my woman. Li Qing stared at the elder sister-in-law seriously. The elder sister-in-law was different from the kind of sister like Zixi. It was the elder sister-in-law who made such a family fortune. "I am already your woman." Big D's wife smiled charmingly. The deep communication just now was the first time she reached the climax as a woman. If it wasn't for Li Qing, she didn't know that such a thing could reach the climax. It can only be said that Big D is not a man. He just touched and touched for 2 minutes. Looking at the entry of loyalty value 70% appearing above Big D's wife, Li Qing smiled, "I believe you." Big D's wife. "Well, my name is Xiao Qi, don't call me Big D's wife. I just like to call you sister-in-law." The two walked out of the warehouse with smiles on their faces. Poor Li Xiao was left with only some broken limbs and arms being eaten by wild dogs. The subsequent plan went smoothly, and everything went according to Li Qing's arrangement. With the support of Jimmy and Long Zhen, Xiao Qi took the position of the boss of Heliansheng and became a legend in the Hong Kong underworld for a while. Hong Xin was different. Since Zhang Tianyang disappeared, the momentum of the society has been declining. Especially Han Bin and Fatty Li, since they knew Zhang Tianyang was missing, they have never dared to leave the land. If it weren't for Li Qing's reputation, the flag of Hong Xin would have been pulled down by others. Even with Li Qing, other societies began to try to slowly swallow up the territory of the major hall masters. Of course, no one dared to touch the tiger's whiskers in Mongkok and Causeway Bay. Hong Kong movies, I can see the loyalty value, I am not panicked at all. Author, Ban Wanqing Buletin Liang. Chapter 40. One sunny morning, Li Qing received a call from Brother Ji, asking him to come to the headquarters. "Kingzi, you see we are leaderless, this is not a solution." Brother Ji obviously wanted Li Qing to make a decision. Li Qing looked at the dozen hall masters and said expressionlessly, "Brother Ji, you are a veteran of 3 dynasties, and you still ask me about this." Brother Ji was embarrassed, as he was a veteran of 3 dynasties. Zhang Tianyang disappeared less than a year after he came. This group of fence-sitters, when Zhang Tianyang forced Li Qing, they raised their hands without hesitation. Li Qing was also tired of this group of old guys, who were not enterprising enough, guarding their own little land all day long, and living on the land fees. They looked like a sunset club. According to the qualifications, Brother Ji should be the one to run for the leader, the prince said calmly. Since Zhang Tianyang disappeared, the prince has been living a very unhappy life, especially after the entire Hong Kong society knew that he and Li Qing were not in harmony, and the land was often swept by other societies. Now he could only lean on Brother Ji, the spokesperson for his uncles. At this time, Ma Wangjian, Liang Ma and others all agreed. They were about to retire and would soon become uncles, so of course they had to support Brother Ji. Haha, if every club is based on seniority, then don't mix it, just wait. Li Qing sneered and looked at the prince with contempt. All the hall masters in the audience looked unhappy when they heard this, and the atmosphere in Juyi Hall became solemn. "I nominate Li Qing." 13th sister took a deep puff of smoke, raised her hand high, and said loudly. The hall masters were all stunned, but no one spoke, and no one supported Li Qing. They knew that Brother Ji would still be the same when he took office, eating and drinking as usual. Once Li Qing took office, whether the position of hall master could be kept or not was another matter. Han Bin and Fatty Li lowered their heads even more, wishing to put their heads in their crotches, so as not to attract Li Qing's attention. Li Qing looked at the performance of the hall masters and shook his head. These people have been short mule mentality all their lives, and their vision is not ordinary. He stood up straight, supported the table with both hands, and glanced at the people around him. "Okay, in this case, I, Li Qing, announce my withdrawal from Hong Xin." Li Qing unilaterally announced his withdrawal from the society, which violated the rules of the Hong Kong society. Everyone looked at him in surprise and was speechless for a while. "Okay, but you have to hand over the land, after all, it belongs to the society." The prince had already offended Li Qing to death, and he didn't care this time. "Want my land? Sure, come and pull my flag," Li Qing slammed his palm heavily on the table and looked at the prince. I'm waiting for you. If you don't come, I'll pull your flag. Li Qing nodded the prince's forehead and walked out of the Juyi Hall arrogantly. Looking at the sky outside the Juyi Hall, he felt like the sea was wide for fish to jump and the sky was high for birds to fly, as if the shackles on his body were broken. In the Juyi Hall, the hall masters were talking about it. Li Qing dared to rebel against Hong Xing. Let's unite and beat him. The prince had just been embarrassed by Li Qing. Beat? You want to beat him with your head? Don't you know who Li Qing's subordinates are? If they were taken to Iraq, they could fight back and forth with the American soldiers. Brother Ji looked at the prince with a gloomy face. He didn't want to be the boss, but his uncles pushed him out to ensure their own status. He offended Li Qing this time, and his life will not be easy in the future. I heard that Li Qing recently recruited a martial arts master, who is now the instructor of his younger brothers. Liang Ma also told the news she heard. Hey, what's the point of beating him? He has people and money. If he wants to leave, just let him go, Ma Wangjian said. Anyway, Mongkok and Causeway Bay belong to the society, not to them, so there is no need to offend a future boss. All the hall masters agreed, and Brother Ji was speechless when he saw the scene. Forget it, the times have changed. Now is the era of profit first and morality aside. As the news of Li Qing's self-establishment spread, the societies in Hong Kong were talking about it, and they all crossed their arms and waited to see what Hong Xing would do. Unexpectedly, Hong Xing actually acquiesced. That night, Li Qing established the New World. Yes, the name of his organization was called New World. Li Qing changed the old system, corporatized the society, and established the New World Group. Its subsidiaries include New World Trading Company, New World Security Company, New World Entertainment Company, New World Property Company, etc. There was also a small episode. East Star Crow left the society and joined Li Qing's New World Group. In fact, Crow threatened him with the recording of Smiling Tiger killing Camel, so that he could easily leave East Star, otherwise it would be a bit troublesome. Li Qing also divided the work among his subordinates. Zhang Qiandan was in charge of New World Trading Company, smuggling business, Feng Yuxia was in charge of New World Security Company, Dehua and Ergu were in charge of the Entertainment Company, and the Property Company was handed over to Gang Sheng. As for Zhang Dongxiu, he was still responsible for Li Qing's security issues. After all, Li Qing didn't want to change him because he was used to it. For a time, all the clubs in Hong Kong knew that there was a new world in Hong Kong. In a short period of time, ambitious short mules joined this club. New World not only has monthly salary, but also visible promotion levels. As long as you have the ability, you will have a chance to come forward, unlike other clubs that have to wait for the old men to retire. This also makes Li Qing's prestige more prominent in the Hong Kong underworld. Rainy night, 4 o'clock in the morning. Xiao Mei came out of the bar. She had just finished drinking with a rich man. She touched the banknotes in her pocket and felt satisfied. The alcohol was rising, so she had to squat down under the street light to vomit, and her head began to feel dizzy. This was a taxi parked next to her. Are you going to Kowloon? The driver of the taxi, wearing black framed glasses, was a little gentle and looked like a weak scholar. Go. Xiao Mei got in the car. After driving for a while, she found that the driver often peeked at him in the rearview mirror. Slowly, she found something wrong, because this road was not to Kowloon, but to Shitin. This is not the road to Kowloon. Where are you taking me? Xiao Mei was no longer drunk and shouted in fear. I'm going to call the police. Xiao Mei took out her mobile phone and planned to call the police. The driver stopped the car and took out a handkerchief to cover Xiao Mei's nose. Then Xiao Mei collapsed and fell into a coma. In the early morning, Li Qing ate a loving breakfast with Gang Shen's help. Oh, it's too cruel, Gang Shen exclaimed as he looked at the newspaper. Li Qing looked at Gang Shen curiously. Brother Ching, there is a perverted killer in Hong Kong who kills people on rainy nights. Even the newspapers tell girls not to go out at night. The police in Hong Kong are all useless. If our police were here, they would have caught him long ago. Gang Sheng spoke with pride, and Li Qing nodded in agreement. Don't go out at night. How about the female bodyguard I assigned to you last time? Is she still suitable? Li Qing specially arranged 2 female bodyguards for Gang Sheng. Yeah, they are very good. That's good, Li Qing smiled. Brother Qing, a dong from Stanley asked someone to call and said that there is something important to find you. Zhang Dongzhou hurried to Li Qing's side. Lin Ye Dong. Yes.